Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Yes, thank you. You shouldn't have. Stop. I didn't even ask for it this time. Hello, everyone. This is not your ordinary fireside chat, is it now? No, we have legends in the back waiting for us, but I will introduce them anyway. Peter Molyneux hardly needs an introduction, but I will do it. He's been in the gaming industry for over 40 years, by starting out by selling floppy disks with game for Atari and the Commodore 64 in 1982. That's 15 years before I was even thought of. So I get to step up my game, I feel like. He's the name in the genre God games, with titles like Populous and Dungeon Keeper, Black and White, as well as the Fable series. He's currently sitting as creative director on the video game developer 22 Cans. And we're all waiting for the release of Masters of Albion. Am I right? Yeah! And then, of course, we have John Clark. He's been in the game publishing for almost 30 years. 12 of those at a little company called Sega. Have you heard of that? Yeah? Sega? Nowadays, he's an independent advisor, using all that knowledge that he's been collecting over the years to help out game businesses. Without further ado, let's bring him back on the stage. John Clark and Peter Molyneux.
Thank you. Good job. Me?
Yeah, come on, Peter. Come on. Peter. Yeah. Did you hear that, like, disappointment when you didn't follow me on and everybody thought, we're not selling you short?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Matilda, for the intro. I'll just give you a little bit more color on me before we hand over to the main event. So either side of Sega, I worked for Eidos, where I was sort of publishing in the UK. After Sega, I went to Tencent, then a UK publisher called Curve Games, an independent publisher, which I left about 12 months ago. Since then, I've been consulting, speaking to people. I've got two main clients. One in Stockholm gives me the absolute pleasure to keep coming back to the region. I'm working with a studio called Medoyo. And secondly, I'm working with Peter and 22 Cans and have been for 12 months. And you know, the first thing that I say, I mention this to Peter every now and then, but I'm sure he doesn't hear me, that in my 30-year career, it is some of the most fun times I've had, going into 22 Cans, sitting in meetings with Peter, going through pitches, going through interviews. It's like, you know, just a ringside seat to one of the most, you know, entertaining legends in the games industry.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, brilliant. So delighted that we can be here. Peter, rather than intro you, because I think you can do all of that after I ask my first question, I'm going to get everything started. By the way, there will be Q&A after 45 minutes. I'm going to ask you 3 questions in one and sit back and listen to your answer. So, been in since the 1980s, you've been in the games industry. What I'd like to understand is, what was the moment you realized you wanted to create video games? What was your first game and why? And looking back, which are the 3 games you're most proud of and why?
Okay, how did I get started? Well, back in the early 80s, there wasn't a games industry. There wasn't a concept of a games industry. There was barely any way of playing computer games. And I can remember I was walking along my hometown, Guildford High Street, and there was an electrical shop. And they had in the window, they had a Pong machine. Who's heard of Pong? Who's played Pong? Okay, you all play it. I saw that, and I thought, it was like the heavens opened. I literally walked in front of the shop window. The sun broke through the clouds, shone on me, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to have one of those. So I'm ashamed to say that I ran home, because I was only 17 years old then. I ran home. I stole the money from my grandmother's purse. I went back to the shop. I brought it. It cost about £80, about 100 euros back then. took it back home, played Pong, thought, this is so fucking boring. So I took the console apart, thinking, maybe I can work it out. Never worked again. But that gave me this kind of itch. And the itch was, if I could get my hands on a computer, maybe I could program a game. And after that, I went to Southampton University. I got a degree. I got a job. It was a sensible job. There was no jobs in the games industries then. And my job was writing these databases for clients. And I used to sneak backdoor Easter eggs in these databases. They were corporate databases. Sneak these backdoors. So if you pressed, if you typed in, I forget what the password, I think it was Santiago. If you typed Santiago into this database, then you went and played this game. And when I was doing that, I spent like 90% of my time on that game and 10% of the time on the database. So I didn't last at the company very long. But then I left there and started my first company, which was called Vulcan, and started working on the first entertainment thing, which was actually the first thing I published and released wasn't a game at all. It was a piece of software called The Composer. Now, one thing you should know about me, I am completely tone deaf. I don't understand music at all. It doesn't make sense to me. All the little crotchets and quaver. I don't understand what it is. But I made this package. I sold it to a publisher. The publisher sold it. He never paid me any money at all. The company went bankrupt, and then I founded Bullfrog, and that's when the journey really started. One day, I walked into the office, and I was working with someone called Glenn Corpus, who he was an artist at the time, and he made these little isometric blocks. And I saw those isometric blocks, and I thought, maybe I should, is there an idea here? And this was the starting of a game called Populous. And you've got to remember, back in those days, I was so poor. I was literally eating baked beans, not because in fact, I can't ever eat a baked bean again because I had to eat so many. I was literally eating baked beans because I couldn't afford anything else. But then Glenn and I started developing this game called Populous. And we had two Amigas connected by a RS-232 lead. And we just played the game and kept on playing the game and playing the game. And we really enjoyed playing it. We didn't finish the game until I consistently won every single game against Glenn. That's the way I balanced the game. If he won, the game wasn't balanced. And we found a publisher. We stumbled across a publisher. It was Electronic Arts back in those days. They'd only just set up in Europe. And the game was released. It was sent out to magazine reviewers back in those days. If you were a journalist on a magazine, you were like God. They were these elusive figures that were godlike. It was sent out to the journalists, and Electronic Arts phoned up and said, we'd like a journalist would like to come over and interview you. I'd never been interviewed in my life. One thing you've got to remember about me, I was a terrible failure at everything else in life up until a point of games. This journalist came over. It was called Bob Wade, and I thought, Jesus, I'm too embarrassed to show him the game. I'll just take him to the pub. So I took him to the pub, and I got him absolutely drunk because I said to him, "What do you think of Populous?" And he said, "It's one of the best games I've ever played." And this overwhelming thought came into my mind: he must never play the game ever again. And so that's why I plied him with, I think he had 10 pints of lager and literally stumbled back, and he kept saying, "Let's go back to the office and play Populous. Let's go back to the bar. Just one more drink, Bob. Just one more drink." And that really got me into the industry. And then it was that moment really when Bob Wade said to me it was one of the best games I've ever played. I kind of realized, oh my God, I'm making computer games. And then the game was released, and it accounted for 1/3 of Electronic Arts revenue. And it started me on this road, which was creating computer games. And it has been the most incredible experience you could possibly imagine. I mean, how many people in this audience are designers? Wow, that's incredible. Just remember, you can have an idea and you can get to play that idea. And that's where this thought, this realization came to me. It's not just a game that we're creating. We don't just create games. We don't just create game mechanics. We create experiences. And those experiences, people who play our games may remember for the rest of their lives. And as a designer, that, for me, defines life. There's nothing as good as that feeling, including sex. For me, there was nothing like the feeling of seeing someone play your game, or talking to someone, or bumping into someone, them saying, "Oh God, I remember in Fable, I had to save the dog." That is the reason that I exist as a designer, are those incredible, amazing moments. People often ask me the question, how's the industry changed? Sure enough, the very fact we're sitting here and as everyone in the audience is incredible. But really, for me, the industry still has a heart. And it has a heart because people like you, like the people in the audience, especially the designers, have this belief that they can create something that is going to just take a little slice of someone's life up and entertain them in a way which is incredibly engaging. And I think, maybe I am an optimist. I think that the games industry still hasn't reached its full potential. I know that we're all a bit doom and gloomish at the moment, but that's because we went a bit crazy just after COVID, in my opinion. But remember, this is a form of entertainment, and if you're entertaining someone, you're creating a little memory. Did that answer any of your questions, John?
Do you know, this is what life at 22 Cans is like. Right, it's amazing. This is what we get to do every day. You answered the questions and more. Bob Wade, 10 pints of lager. Remember that for all you budding designers. I'd still love to know, of all the games you've created, how many games have you created, and what are the top 3? What are the 3 that mean most to you? And I know that's a tricky question to ask.
Every game I've created, I put my heart and soul into. So there is never a favorite game I've created, because each one feels like a slice of passion that's in the game. But the favorite team I've worked with on a game is the Black and White team. I mean, Jesus, that was an incredible team. There were 25 of us, and how many people have played Black and White? Wow. And we we all started out, and we had this team, and there were incredible people like Paul McLaughlin and Mark Healy and Scorn Roberts and all of these incredible people working together. And we created that game in the same way as every game I've been involved with has been created, the same way as Populous was created. And this is, any designer in this room, don't do this because it's crazy, and if you've got investors, they'll probably assassinate you for doing it this way. But what we do is say, we start out with an idea, and that idea is more about a feeling, more about the feeling that you want the player to have. And this sort of idea of concentrating more on a feeling than a game mechanic necessarily gave birth to a game that I was involved with called Magic Carpet, where it was a shooter, but instead of it being in a corridor or you shooting zombies around, you flew on a magic carpet. Stupid idea, really. Let's be honest. I mean, would you rather run around a corridor with a huge, massive gun or fly on a magic carpet? We all know the answer. But what we wanted, what we discussed was, wow, wouldn't it be cool to fly on a magic carpet? Just imagine the freedom of flying and, you know, this feeling of power. And this notion of concentrating more on the feeling that you want the player to have is the way we develop. So we start with that feeling, right, why don't we try this mechanic? Why don't we try that mechanic? And Black and White is my favorite game because my favorite game I've ever developed is Masters of Albion. I'm developing now, of course. But the team just embraced this crazy, chaotic way of working. Right, let's try this. Right, we've just created that. That's the heart of the game. Right, Black and White, Dungeon Keeper, Magic Carpet, whatever game you mentioned, that is going to be the heart of the game. A week later, no, it's not the heart of the game anymore, because we've got this shiny thing. And that's the way that we develop. We think about the experience, we try things out, and we do the most important thing in any development process. And that is, we play the fucking game. And what's incredible to me is I've seen a lot of teams that never play the game they're creating, which is insanity. I mean, they don't play the game because the graphics aren't right, or the sound effects aren't in, or the narrative storyline isn't there. But I say, as soon as you possibly can, you play. Even if what you're playing is primitive and horrible, you're only really going to discover the next light bulb moment if you play the game. And for me, the Black and White team, Black and White was almost impossible to make because we had this giant creature. We were trying to put proper AI in a game for the first time. We had this crazy notion, because we wanted the player to feel powerful as a god, we didn't want any HUD at all. No HUD, nothing. No HUD at all on the screen, which really, when you think about it, was very challenging to do, especially with a game like a god game. But the team totally embraced that way of working, totally embraced this idea of experimentation and failure and to play through it. Yeah. So Black and White.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when Masters is out, it's going to be Masters, because you know what? Masters of Albion, I've got the same team, with the same key members of the team that worked on Black and White and Fable. This is what we've done. We've done exactly the same again. We started with this feeling that we wanted you, the player, to have. And with Masters of Albion, that feeling is, we want you to feel powerful, but we want to give you something so elusive, and that is freedom. We want to give the player the freedom to play the game in any way they want, which any designer would say, well, that's just crazy. Why not just do another role-playing game? Why not just do another God game? No, I think what Masters of Albion should approach the way that people play and really embrace who you, the player, is, not me, the designer, wanting you to play in a certain way. So Masters of Albion, where you've got the onboarding section, I mean, that is tedious. It's all tedious in every game. The first 20 minutes when you're learning what you're doing. But then after that, we give you freedom. And that freedom, I hope, is going to be the heart of the game. But it's terrifying. I mean, I wish I could show you the game now, because I'd love you to see what I mean by freedom. God, I feel so emotional.
No. So I think that's all sort of fascinating and very moving as well, Peter. And I'll sort of like, if I ask more questions that may add to that, I offer no apology. I think, people sort of want to hear what inspires you, and I'll ask some questions in a moment. You'll notice that we're not showing Masters of Albion, we're not presenting it to you, we're not selling it, we're not pitching,
Well, you know why? Because I really screwed up the press and promotion 10 years ago. Because, when I talk to the press, I just cannot, I'm the worst PR person in the world. I really am. I never follow a script. When I was working on Fable and doing a lot of talks and a lot of press stuff, there would be an army of PR people behind me going, now, Peter, don't say this, don't say that, only talk about features in the game, only talk about things that you're actually developing. And then I'd sit down in an audience like this, and this overwhelming emotion was for me to talk about the passion that I had for the game. And that passion just overrides any PR rules that are there. And that's when, so halfway through the development of Black and White or Fable, whichever game you like to talk of, I talked to the press, because back in those days, when you launched a game, you did press for 1 or 2 years before. You'd show it at E3, you'd go around and meet all the journalists. And I just couldn't help being unbelievably passionate about what I was doing. And this wasn't me making it up. This was how I actually felt. Because for me, when I develop a game, I have to put everything I have in it. Every waking moment has to be about the game. And so if you sit me down in front of the press, what's going to happen? I'm going to get emotional. I'm going to talk about the things that aren't in the game, but hey, I've got this great idea. I'll give you an example. I was doing the press on Fable, and some journalist said, is it going to be a good game? And, what is someone like me going to say to a question like that? No, I said, it's going to be the greatest fucking role-playing game you've ever played, which is obviously, a promise. If I was the logical person, I realized, I'm going to say a line like that. That's a promise. I'm making a promise that I'm making the greatest role-playing game of all time. I should never have said that line. It was silly and childish. Like another example on Fable, they were talking about the world and the environment, and with the team, I just said, I wonder if we could have acorns that the player could plant that would grow into trees, and they could plant an acorn anywhere. And we spoke about it. Yeah, that's possible. And they were working on that very feature. And so the next press person I've got to tell you about acorns. I've got to tell you about, I should have just concentrated on fighting and swords and leveling up and stuff like that. But I went to Acorns, and then the press went out about Acorns, and then everyone thought they'd be able to place hundreds of Acorns down all over the world of Albion. But we culled that feature. That's what it's like to be a designer. You've got to be brutal with the features if they don't fit. We culled that feature because if people planted lots of oak trees down, the frame rate would drop. In our tests, we had people planting up to 200 oak trees. Now, this is on the Xbox One, so the frame rate was about 4 frames a second. So we had to cut that. We had to cut the feature. But I always get in terrible trouble of doing the press. I am very nervous about doing press on Masters of Albion, because I can feel this voice bubbling up inside me saying, tell them about this, for Christ's sake, tell them about that, tell them about what else is going to happen in the game, and that's just wrong.
Yeah. And it's been fascinating talking about, with you, the last sort of almost 12 months, been talking nothing but Masters of Albion, and we've been going through pitches and interviews, and it's been absolutely amazing. And, straight after Fable and Lionhead, you established 22 Cans.
Yeah.
And for 22 Cans, you've had like more than a decade of innovating in the mobile space. Yeah. And now there's that trigger that has said, PC, God game.
Yeah.
Why now? What was the catalyst, and what's inspired Masters of Albion?
Right. Well, that was a big mistake, wasn't it? I mean, I was working at Microsoft. I was working on Fable. I loved working on Fable. It was, we were talking about, this, and if you can imagine what it feels like to have a franchise, to have been part of a team that's developed this franchise. And we were talking about Fable 1, Fable 2, and Fable 3, and Fable 4, and life. I could see my life just roll out in front of me. I'm going to be making Fable, and I'm going to take this franchise to new heights. And then this tragic thing happened. I watched Steve Jobs walk on stage and flick that iPhone. And the moment that his finger swiped up on the screen, I thought, oh my God, everyone in the world is going to have a gaming device in their pocket. I shouldn't be doing Fable. I should leave Microsoft, leave my lovely job. I was creative director of whole Europe, for Christ's sake. It was an amazing position I had. I'll leave it because surely that's what I should do as a designer, is I should bring people into the world of games. For me, playing games is the most joyful thing that you can do in your life. And imagine the opportunity of creating a game that hundreds of millions of people could play. So I left. I started 22 Cans. I found a new team of people, and our passion was creating something that a world of non-gamers would play and enjoy and experience. And we created a game called Goddess, and it's still doing incredibly well. It's played by millions of people. We created a game called The Trail. Again, it was played by millions of people. Both of them won lots of awards. But then I realized this horrible truth is, if you want to make money out of players, and there's nothing wrong with making money out of players, don't get me wrong, I think of it in the same way as a hobby. If I have a hobby, my hobby is cooking. I love buying sharp knives. I mean, not only sharp knives, I mean, seem like a mass murderer. But, I love buying kitchen gadgets and equipment, and I love, cooking with great food. I love investing in my hobby. And that's the same way that I think about people spending money on games. They're investing in their hobby. But the problem is there is a formula. There is a formula for monetizing players on mobile. And that formula is, well, in my opinion, greedy. It's a greedy formula. It cares more about monetizing than it does about entertaining. And some people do a fantastic job and it's a great experience on mobile, but it's hard to break out of that free-to-play formula. And at one point, just after I finished the trail, this is about almost 5 years ago now, I thought, two thoughts came to me. Firstly, the first thought is, Jesus, I'm 60 years old. How did that happen? I've only really got enough life force for one more game. And I just thought I would love that to go back to the PC and the console. I would love to create something meaningful. A landmark game. And I've been so amazingly fortunate to work with unbelievably talented people that have stumbled on or defined landmark games like the original Goddess, or like Dungeon Keeper, or like Black and White. So I thought to myself, right, if I'm going to do that, what should inspire me? I knew it was going to be an experience, but what should inspire me? So I went back and looked at some of my old games. I looked at Dungeon Keeper. What a mess. I mean, the heart of that game was there, but the interface was just awful. But the heart of this game, the idea that players could build something which was then attacked, they could, it was fun building it. It was good to play the bad guy. It was good to be evil. And I created this list of features. Right, what do I want to explore? And if anyone's played Dungeon Keeper, you may remember in Dungeon Keeper there was a possession mechanic. You could possess creatures, but it had no purpose in the game, really. It was there as a gimmick. And I thought to myself, right, I definitely want to explore more stuff with that possession mechanic. So I started this list, and then I went to Black and White, and still very, very charming, but, all the characters in the game were made out of like 16 polygons. I mean, God, now there's 16 polygons in an eyelash. And so with Black and White, I loved the open world feel. I loved the God hand. I loved the feeling that we were trying to engage the player in. So I added to that list. I then went to the Fable series. I still adore Albion. I adore the narrative. I adore the cheekiness, the humor of it, the fact it didn't take itself seriously. I loved its open world. I loved leveling up. And so I added to this list, and I thought to myself, right, this is what we're going to try and mold together in a new, fresh and unique and different way. And then I realized I'm going to need the old team back together. So I blackmailed, bullied, kidnapped people like Mark Healy, who is an utter genius, Russell Shaw, an utter genius, Kareem, Ian Wright, all these people that I worked with before on Fable and Black and White and Dungeon Keeper. And I said, right, this is going to be the last game. It's got to be brilliant. And that's what we're making. Sorry, I'm getting so emotional. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
It's I think it's amazing. I think, I don't think I need to say this, but this is an incredibly intimate session, right? And probably, one of the most, I think, personal, intimate sessions that Peter's done for a long time. Now, I'm not talking from experience. I've been working with Peter for about 12 months, but throughout my career, I've actually worked with alumni,
lots of people.
Bullfrog and Lionhead alumni. I've worked with Muckyfoot Games.
Yeah.
I've worked with Elixir Studios. If anybody remembers Elixir, it was Demis. Yeah. And also most recently 2 Point Studios, 2 Point Hospital, which is where the connection came. And I always think all of this amazing talent. And then when I come to 22 Cans, this amazing talent is present. You say, the founders of Media Molecule left Lionhead, they left Lionhead and they've come back.
It's incredible.
What do you think creates all of this? I mean, Malmo's a hub that punches above its weight. Stockholm's a hub that punches above its weight. Guildford as well. But it can almost be traced back to Bullfrog and Lionhead. What do you think creates this?
I think there is an addiction to passion. I say to myself, I've never worked a day in my life, because what I do is utter passion. And if you're in a team that is that passionate about what they do, there is an addiction to it, and it becomes a magnetic force for people to come and experience that passion. And it has been, will always be a lifelong memory, the moment, and don't get me wrong, there are horrific moments in the course of development. If you're developing in this chaotic way, there are horrific moments when you're thinking to yourself, Christ, the magic isn't going to happen this time. We haven't found the core of the game. But then when it does, the team all realizing the moment that we're making this game, and it is unique, and it is different, and it is special, that is a fantastic experience. And if anyone's experienced it, I'm sure you'll agree with me. If you haven't experienced it, then just look for it, because it's a wonderful, incredible experience. And that does pull talented people in. And because, if you are creative, you want to be in that incredible creative greenhouse of games you're making. So, it's once you've started, it's much easier, and it's a bit unfair. It's so easy to find talented people, because you can say, we're going to make a brilliant game, man. Don't waste your life on making a game that's not going to make a difference. Come and work with us and we'll make a brilliant game. And that is, it's arrogant. I must admit, it is arrogant. But it is addictive and tantalizing to bring great people in.
And there's certainly this vibrancy when everybody comes together. You see it all clicking. Yeah. It's just amazing to, I can't say I participate. I sit in meetings and I witness this creative explosion, which is fascinating. One last question, and then we'll open it up. I'm going to go almost like back to the future. And the reason I say that is I mentioned some of the alumni who I've worked with, and let's talk about one of the hot topics, which you were talking about, hot topics of today, but it was very present all those years ago when you were working with Demis, which is artificial intelligence. And I'm sure people would love to hear what your take is on it, completely independently of any game development or anything like that, just Peter Molyneux on artificial intelligence. Where,
I mean, it's been an incredible life that I've had. I've gone from when there was no 3D to 3D when we had just tinny little music to full orchestras. AI is a tool. It's another tool, just like middleware is a tool. If you're not careful, AI can make you lazy. And you can say, you can use it for concepting or use it for narrative stuff. But its potential is incredible. And the reason it's incredible is that we, human beings, will always be the motivator for AI. And if you use this tool, you can get to that idea, and I should explain this, that for me, ideas don't come and form completely in one moment. Any designer that can just go, I've got an idea, I'll just write it all down now, here you go, that's the idea. Ideas evolve in your mind, and AI is a fantastic companion to that evolution process. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it will allow, and I totally believe in this, that we as an industry have to support the people, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 person teams that are out there with those crazy ideas. AI can support those tiny micro teams in a way that even money, huge amounts of money can't. So what I would say to you all, there is no AI, no large language model based AI in Masters of Albion, but you can be sure as hell I've used it every day to help weed out that idea from my mind, help explain ideas clearly to the rest of the team that I or other designers have, help refine narrative, help inspire you as a creator. Don't be scared of it. Embrace it and help evolve AI so it becomes a tool for creation. And that's exactly what it can be. Consumers justifiably are going to be nervous about AI because, you know, the early AI images, the multi-fingered hands that were out there, have given our consumers, especially gamers, a view that AI is bad in games. I don't think it's going to be embraced, it's going to be used, it's going to drive perhaps even new genres out there, but we, the creators, are responsible for sculpting that AI in a way for it to reach its potential. So I think it's one of the most exciting things that's happening now in the games industry. And as an aside, if any of you are interested in VC investment, if you're pitching to a VC, just use AI every other sentence, because, you know, that at the moment the VC community will latch on to AI. It'll only probably last 2-3 years, and then they'll latch on to something else. But it is an enormous potential.
Great, thank you. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. We're going to have Q&A. We've tried to talk a bit of the past, a bit of the present, and a bit of the future. And with the future, it's always one of those that, certainly at the moment with AI, is one of those that sort of polarized. Everybody has different views. And hopefully this gives you something to think about, something to consider. What I would like, I think we've got 15 minutes left. I'd love, if there are any questions, to take questions from the floor. We see the first hand go up down here. Do we have anybody with a microphone who'll come over to you? And then if we can raise the lights a little bit so we can see anybody else. But brilliant.
Thank you. So freedom is, of course, a big theme in all your games. What other games, beside your games, do you think do a good job with that theme?
With freedom?
Yes.
God, that's a good question, isn't it? I think it's been explored. I think probably for me, the best example of freedom is probably Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom. And God, I've got an enormous amount of admiration for the team that created that. Because what they did brilliantly, in a genius way, they opened the game. I'll talk about Tears of the Kingdom because it's the most recent one. They opened the game, you were on this little island floating in the sky. They didn't bother trying to explain why the island floated. I mean, that wasn't important at all. They taught you some of the basic mechanics, but when you flew off of that top island, you flew down, you saw this entire landscape, And it was up to you where you went. If you wanted to go and defeat Ganondorf in, the first half hour of the game, totally up to you. If you wanted to go on a quest for the Master Sword, totally up to you. And I think that freedom, without burdening the player of thinking, oh God, I really should be doing this, or was genius, was absolute genius. And if Masters of Albion approaches that sensation of freedom, I think we're doing pretty well, which it does.
Thank you. And I agree with Tears of the Kingdom.
In the middle, just straight up there. Oh, sorry.
Shout.
Seeing as you're there, you ask the question, and then we'll come to you in the middle. Is that okay? It's easier for the mic.
Right. Thank you, Peter, for sharing your passion with us. You talked about culling features.
Yeah.
And the example with the acorns and the trees. Is there a feature that you still think about now that you're really mad about culling?
Gosh, not that I can remember off the top of my head, although every time you do colour something, it a little part of you dies, not only because you're guilty because you probably came up with the idea that is being culled. You're guilty because some coder or artist has spent a long time. In the old days, those coders and artists would have worked weekends and evenings. We don't crunch anymore, which is a good thing. So you feel terribly guilty that they've wasted your time, and you feel very insecure that, Jesus, I've had to say goodbye to that. But I can't remember. I think what I do as a semi-autistic person, I just rub that feature out of my mind. I sort of warm myself up to hating that feature, hating it so much that I have the bravery to go out and present. And incidentally, when you're developing like that, if you've got a publisher, or you're owned by a publisher, as we were in Lionhead's case, it's very challenging. When you've got some, game review at a publisher and they say, what's happened to the flying? Oh, we culled that. Why did you cull it? It was the whole point of the game. Oh, it didn't fit. And it's a very challenging conversation to have. You've got to justify it. You've got to have slides and screenshots, and of why you justified it. But I do find my personality just hates the feature I'm culling so much, because I'm going to have to build up. Sorry, that didn't answer your question directly. But
Thank you.
Okay. We had in the middle, just there. Wow, we've got, just here. And then we had one right at the back on the left afterwards. Okay, we'll come up to you all the way up there next.
Hi, Peter. It almost feels disrespectful to ask you, such a legend of the game, about a project that never came out. But I want to do it anyway. And if you don't want to, or you can't,
I know what you're going to talk about. I think I do. Or there's a 50-50 choice. You're going to talk about Milo and Kate, or you're going to talk about BC.
Yeah, so in 2009, I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And I watched you on E3 talk about Project Milo.
Yeah.
To this day, I still believe that you had a vision for Project Milo.
Yeah.
And just as much as I did back then.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what happened with it?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what happened. I mean, we were owned by Microsoft. Brought us. We were owned by Microsoft, and they had. I'm going to say this. I don't think I might get in trouble, but they had what I thought was a bit of a crazy idea, and that was to do gesture recognition as an input device rather than the controller. And they showed me this stuff, and Microsoft had this amazing research building, incredible. And it was run by this brilliant guy called Alex Kipman, incredible, makes me look boring and passionless. He had 10 times more passion I had. And he had this demo of this device, and when he showed me this demo, it could see people's faces, it could, he said, we're going to do voice recognition, and it had a massive field of view, so it could see this whole room. And he said, what do you think? And I said, well, firstly, when he did the demo, he was jumping all over the room. Look, it can recognize my arms and my legs. And I said, firstly, I'm a gamer. I don't want to play games standing up. That's the first thing. It doesn't appeal to me. I want to sit back. I want to smoke what I smoke. I want to drink what I drink. And I don't want to prance around like a twat. That's what I said. And I said, right, I'll go away and I'll create a demo of what I think the technology you showed me, how we should use it. And again, I go back to what I want the player to feel. Now, at that time, my son, Lucas, was about 7 years old. And anyone who's a parent will probably experience this. There was this moment where you realize you're crafting, inspiring a human being. And wouldn't it be an incredible thing to create a game around that feeling? Oh, God. Sorry. It's my mum.
It's Milo.
It's Milo, yeah. Wouldn't it be incredible to create an experience around that, about inspiring? In our case, in Milo's case, it was a young boy. That was contentious in itself because, of course, lots of people go to the dark side with that. And so we started working on this demo, and we were working with this technology company, which I can't remember the name of, which would do voice recognition. And we had all sorts of experiences, like you could hand things to Milo in the game world and he would take them. And they really worked well. And you know what? Even though we cheated, and we cheated in a big way about how you could talk to Milo, because what I wanted people to do is just sit back on the sofa and just experience things with this game character. And we even though voice recognition now is almost a solved problem, unless you're using Apple products, where Apple intelligence is getting worse every day than better. But back in those days, we solved the problem by cheating. So when Milo asked you, the player, a question, we had set that question up to a point so we knew what sort of answer we were giving. Anyway, I won't go into the technical difficulties. Unfortunately, as we were developing Milo, so the Connect device was being developed, and they realized that the device that Alex Kipman had first shown off would cost $5,000 for consumers to buy. So they cost reduced that device down to such a point where you could, the field of view, I think it was a minuscule field of view. In other words, it could only just see what's straight in front of you. And then the death blow of Milo, which still breaks my heart to this day, was that it was decided that Kinect shouldn't be a gaming device, it should be a party device. You should play, sports game with it or dancing games with it. So it just didn't fit into the Microsoft portfolio, and unfortunately the project was killed. But no one ever saw the complete experience. We didn't finish the experience, but it was a magical thing. You were just going on this, what was so magical about it? It wasn't about heroes and aliens coming down from, there wasn't this narrative which was the end of the world scenario. It was just experiencing what it's like to hang out with someone that loves you.
We're going to try for 2 more questions. We've got just under 7 minutes, and we're going to go right the way to the back, to the gent, if you can sprint up there with the microphone. And then we're going to try, there was one down here on the left, I think we're going to try and get to finally. And you're on hold depending on how this question goes. It's going to take him 3 minutes to get up there, by the way, but could do with the exercise, been sitting down all day.
First, thank you for making it all the way to the back with the mic.
Right.
Mr. Molyneux, it's been very emotional and humbling hearing you share your experiences.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned the problems and flaws with mobile games and the type of experiences that are crafted for them. Have you encountered in your career any games or products or any pieces of entertainment on mobile devices that stand out to you as achieving the goals that you as a creator set for games, as a bar for games, as an art form?
Yeah. Let me be clear.
Have you played any good mobile games?
Yeah. I think there are many mobile experiences that I have really enjoyed and loved. And I think some of those are things like Clash of Clans. When it came out, I really loved them. But the point I was making is not that it's completely flawed as a gaming device, but I'm sure some of you realize that part of the problem with creating games today is funding. And, working on a premium title for mobile is challenging to get the funding. And then if you work on a free-to-play game for mobile, then if you're trying to get funding, the first thing that they ask you is, right, let's see your game loop slide. And, the game loop slide has got to be familiar to them. So what I really should have said is that mobile gaming, I've got a Balatro on here, which I'm going to play on the plane home. I've really loved games like The Room on there, which are ex-Lionhead people. I loved Monument Valley, they're ex-Lionhead people. So there are some really great experiences on here, don't get me wrong. But for me as a designer, almost being forced because of funding to develop a free-to-play game sort of broke my heart a little bit, and that's why I took a step back to mobile. But don't get me wrong. I think this is a great device. The only problem with the device is when you're making especially a narrative-based game or an immersive game where you really want to immerse people in a world or an experience, it's quite hard to do on these devices because, I find myself when I play them, because it's not in my full field of view. I'm playing something while watching television. I'm playing something while flying on a plane. I'm playing something while sitting on the toilet. Well, yeah, maybe that's a bit too personal to share, but and that makes it harder to grab and keep the player's attention, and especially when you're creating something which is immersive, you really want the player to be immersed as well. But I think there is great experiences, and what I would say to any designers in the room that are designing mobile games, you've still got that incredible opportunity that hundreds of millions of people have this device in your pocket. And I still feel, although free-to-play games do entertain people and there are entertainment experiences, we still haven't really found the defining signature game, entertainment experience that these devices are capable of. And, so if you're working on a mobile game, dare to be unique, original, and different. You just say, fuck it, I'm going to take the risk and not do the formula, but that's probably terrible advice. John would probably say the opposite. Yeah.
We've got just under 2 minutes left. Let's just try and ask one more question down here in the front. Ask it as quickly as you can. Gives Peter more time to answer.
Who cares? Let's just talk.
Well, yeah, Jakob will shout at me afterwards. But then, Peter hasn't agreed to do this, but I suggest just ambush him outside when you see him if you've got questions.
Thanks, John.
All right. Hi, Peter. Thanks for the discussion. I'm 25. I'm just opening the door to the games industry. I literally wasn't there to play these classics that we've talked about today. And I wanted to ask you for advice on someone like me who's just coming to the cruel and cold and capitalistic industry that we have today. And also thank you for reminding me why I got on this roller coaster 10 years ago when I was 15.
Right. So, here's some things. If you get a job, you can go out and set up your own company and find your own team and work on your own idea, but it's a bit crazy. You need to understand how the industry works and what does a producer do, for example, and what the hell do they do? You need to find that out for yourself. And that means getting a job in a company. And what I would say to you is just be unbelievably curious about everything. If you go in as a tester or an artist or a programmer or a designer in a junior position, don't just stay in a little box. Be curious about everything and comment on everything, but don't just say, oh, I think that's shit. That's rubbish. Just spend the time to, if you're working on a game inside a company and there's a mechanic in the game and it's not working, you should go home, write a little document up about it and say, I've had this idea, what do you think? They'll probably tell you to go to hell because you're 25 and haven't got any experience, but that sense of curiosity, that sense of passion that you can show is going to lift you above everyone else around there. And I would say 20% of all the great people that worked at Bullfrog and Lionhead came from people like that would come in on a week's work experience. Incidentally, if anyone wants to do work experience at 22 Cans, just email me because we love having people in for work experience. P. Molyneux at 22 Cans. Just go in there and keep that passion alive in yourself. Be unbelievably curious about what's happening next. If you see something that you don't like, don't just say it's shit. Just do that extra work and solve the problem. And you'll be surprised, I hope, that how you'll blossom yourself.
Thank you.
And yeah. So to finish, firstly, absolute fabulous audience. For me personally, that's like yet again, a 100% track record hit rate where I've spoken to you and I've felt amazed, emotional.
Being
laughing
emotional, that was just silly.
No, I'm just telling you how...
I shouldn't have got emotional. I just haven't done any real press for 10 years. And, I should have... I don't know, I should have got drunk or something before coming on stage. But, it's a bit embarrassing, especially from a 66-year-old. You'd think that sort of thing would go out, but...
Yeah, only just 66 though, Peter.
Yeah, all right,
Look, I love having these conversations with Peter. As an audience, it's so fabulous that you can actually join us on this. It's so fabulous that Nordic Game have given us the opportunity to just sit here and just relax, I guess, in front of such a friendly audience. You've given Peter a round of applause, please. Thank you. Peter's been...
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, John. That was great. That was good. Thank you, everyone.